Great to be back here. I do love Garden Week. It's been around, or Perth Garden Festival in one form or another. It's been around as long as I have. So I've been here at most of them. I love Garden Week, and so inspiring to see all the new plant releases and all the displays. So today I'm going to be talking about growing your own edible landscape, because who doesn't like to eat beautiful food? So when we're looking at growing our edible landscape, we use some of the same thought processes that we would do for designing any kind of landscape. When we're looking at normal landscapes, perhaps we're looking for showy, stunning, entry statement style gardens. So your edible landscape doesn't have to be any different. It can be showy and stunning as well. You know, once upon a time we didn't used to segregate our plants. Have our veggies out back in the veggie patch and our fruit trees in a fruit tree orchard area. We used to grow everything together, and I'm talking a long time ago. But I think we need to kind of come back to those ideas when we're looking at conserving our precious resources. So conserving water, improving, and we have to improve our soils in Perth to get anything to grow. So we're putting a lot of energy and resources into creating beautiful soil to then grow our plants. So our edible landscape is very similar too. We need to look at those things and use those same kind of ideas as we would with an ornamental landscape. So we've got an image up here showing you an edible landscape where it looks like an ornamental, but we've got lots of lovely edible plants tucked in there. We have sages and salvias, and we've got strappy leaf plants as well. So garlic and lemongrass tucked in there through that garden as well. Our ornamental but also edible trees are the olive tree in here, and I can also see a carob tree as well in that landscape. So we need to then, look at our plants not as just edible, but look at the foliage form. Is the leaf rounded? Is it long and strappy? How do these plants work together and play off against each other? Looking at colour of the form, looking at colour of the flower, colour of the foliage, and really looking at those for what they provide ornamentally in our landscape as well. Here's a lovely image, and we can do just about any garden style we want incorporating edibles. We can go to town and have a completely edible landscape if you wanted to, and there's some really good examples of food forest type gardens around that are worth checking out. But to have a food forest and have that amount of abundance in produce which you would get, you kind of need to be there a little bit more than a lot of us might be. So working people, perhaps adding in some edible plants into a landscape rather than an edible forest is more aspirational for us, and certainly works with busy lifestyles. So this example here shows a very lush looking garden. I would call it a tropical style. We've got big foliage plants, some succulents in there for colour, and then we've got some edibles tucked in. Can you spot the basil through there, the purple leaf basil plants, which look very, very pretty, showcased against those lovely fleshy succulent leaves and those big strappy plants, but they're also edible, and you can go out and harvest, and there's enough there to make basil pesto if you wanted to in that edible garden. So by tucking in our edible plants as ornamental features in any garden style, we can get the best of both worlds, I believe. Even a cottage garden style here with lots of layering there. This is where I sort of look at, with our plant spacing, having your ground covers which will kind of knit the whole design together. So your ground cover edibles include things like your thyme and your oregano, which would work very well in a cottage style. If you have a native garden, then there's some lovely ground cover edibles that you could work into your native garden palette. So things like the myoporum, the creeping bubalia has little berries on it, and that works very, very well in a native garden. The ostromyrtus, the midgeonberry, with its lovely bronzy leaf, also as a low story plant in your native garden. There's a lot of lovely bush tucker plants under the name of tucker bush. You may have come across those, which are here at the show. There's a great display at the Xanthorrhoea nursery stall, and I'll be helping out there this afternoon. So come and have a look at the tucker bush range of plants for your Australian edible garden. Using flowers in the garden is also really important, and our image here shows some lovely rock rose, the Mediterranean rock rose. But in my garden at home, I also bring in flowers that I can eat, and I have them throughout. So don't be afraid to have flowers as well. They give you those pops of colour They give you interest, but they also, if you're choosing edible flowers, you've got that edible component. I picked one this morning from my garden. This is a little calendula, which has edible petals, and I believe the petals also, provide some colour in your food too. So colour up. They can add colour to butter or icing as well, but they look lovely in a salad, the calendula. The other job that these flowers do is bring in the beneficial insects, and we need to bring the insects in to pollinate our garden so that we're actually getting a yield from our plants, but also the beneficials will manage the pesty insects for you, so you don't have to do as much with regards to pest control in your garden if you've got lots of diversity and lots of life in your garden as well. So calendula is a lovely one, and I just started these from a few seeds from a friend's garden and then scattered them through, and now I just harvest and share them around. So having the colour in is really, really important too, because we want our gardens to look good as well. And looking at our plants in terms of their foliage form, so nice to sort of break up, and this is where you sort of get to be the garden designer if you like, and you're using your form to break up and provide interest, so a big ornamental leaf amongst your other plants. So we're looking at the colour and the foliage and the texture of our plants to create interest, so it just doesn't mash and blend all into one. Now when you're planting an edible landscape, like with any landscape, we look at putting the smaller plants in front, so low growing plants, and then step up to taller plants there. I love this image here showing sort of limestone type stone. I think it's a great idea to use the local stone in your area as well, the local materials, so that your garden really looks planted into the landscape. Here we've got some rows of plants, but I find in my edible garden having drifts of plants works really well. So a drift is not a row, it's more of a free-form shape with odd-numbered plants within it. So they work really well for impact too, and there might be things that you want to have more of. Your chives look fabulous in a drift. Even your basils look fabulous too. And it's my view that every garden needs at least one tree. And here's a lovely example in a Mediterranean style garden of using the trees as the feature. So 3 big terracotta pots there with some beautiful citrus plants layered up. So that's a really lovely idea of having an edible landscape, and there's a few colourful things in there that you wouldn't eat, the geraniums, but they're going to bring in those insects that you want as well. So they have a role in that garden. And with your pots, making them big and making them really make a statement works very well. So your trees can be used as screening plants. They can be up pruned to enable underplanting around those. They can be used for canopy. If you struggle for space, then you can manipulate those trees to conform to that space. If you're doing your edible trees in pots, though, I do recommend get a really good quality, the best that you can afford, potting mix, and work on renovating that soil mix every 4 or 5 years or so to replenish that for the plant to keep them growing and keep them happy. And then here's an example that you can even have a formal style garden using edible plants. So you can use culinary herbs as your border. We've got lovely artichoke, the big silver leaf, making quite a statement in there. You don't necessarily have to eat the artichoke, but the flowers do have those edible buds. They also look fabulous, not only in the garden, but also as a cut flower in a vase, so you can bring that colour inside too. And amongst those you can add more seasonal annuals, like your lettuce and cabbage and various things throughout that garden as well. So any theme or style that you might be contemplating could be tweaked to have more edible components in it. Here's a great example of gardening in a narrow space. So we've got the Espalier style fruit trees, and that works very well for your citrus plants. Also works for apples, plums, pears, and even figs can be grown Espalier style. So there's lots of options there, and that really enables you to get a lot of plant material happening in a small space. Our image there shows some lovely basil underneath, which gives great colour as well. And if you're considering an arbour or a structure to provide some shade in your garden, a nice place to sit, rather than a rose or wisteria, which are very, very pretty, perhaps you might consider an edible vine like a grapevine. So you're getting that lovely shade in summer, the extra light coming through when the leaves fall in winter, and you get fruit as well. And there's a lovely, lots of edibles laid into that garden. I can see some amaranth in the background there as well. All my students and my clients know how much I love this Aussie invention, this innovation here. And they are actually here at the Perth Garden Festival, so I would suggest go and have a chat to the Veggie Pod crew here. I've got a couple of these Veggie Pods at my place and I'm totally won over. In fact, it was Nick Bell that recommended them to me. Thank you, Nick. And I have just been getting the best crops in my Veggie Pod of basil and lettuce. Last year I had the best coriander in my life. Some of you have heard the story. The way these work is that they are a giant wicking bed, essentially. So the water is in a reservoir that wicks up through the soil, and then you've got the dome with the shade, plus the reticulation overhead. So your veggies in Perth, they're going to get bitter if all they're getting is 2 times a week watering in Perth. They're going to go to seed very quickly and bolt and just not taste as good, and you'll be finding yourself having to water them every day, but not with a self-watering reservoir system like this. So mine's just getting the 3 times a week watering with the bore water, and always lush and abundant and looking fabulous. So it's a good little innovation to have a look at there. I've harvested a few things to show you from my Veggie Pod today. At the moment I have got a lot of basil growing in there with my lettuce, and so I've got the purple basil, which looks really, really pretty, chopped up. I mix it with the green and use it as a garnish on soups and salads and just about everything. The lovely sweet green basil there, beautiful leaves, and they're all looking after themselves beautifully in the Veggie Pod system there. I even pop a couple of plants in there that I'm raising from seedling to then, like a nursery, and then plant them out into the broader garden. So this is the sacred basil, or the tulsi basil, also known as perennial basil. So it's got the basil flavour, but the leaf is a lot smaller and longer. This one I found lasts in my garden. I've had 3, 4, 5 years out of these, and I only had to replant them because they fall over. Well, one fell over eventually, it just got so big. But this is the best plant for bringing in the bees, I find. So that's a brilliant one too, the Tulsi basil. Anyone wants to take any cuttings, please come and help yourself to those later on as well. Other things I like to use all around my garden, and I actually put thyme throughout all my garden areas. I put sage throughout as well, and I love this purple one, but there's also the grey-green, and there's also the variegated. There's even a pinky coloured one too. Really, really pretty, dotted through. Nice to have all those fresh things there ready for picking when you need them, but in the meantime they're growing and looking gorgeous as well. Strawberries, anyone with a young family would know that one strawberry plant just isn't enough. You need a patch of strawberries, and we're all for spray-free in my house and organic where possible, and generally we only either eat organic strawberries from the organic shop or we grow our own, and it's great for the kids to have that experience of getting out into the garden and having a little forage. And my kids know, growing up with it, what things are safe to eat and what are not, and know that they can harvest when they're red when ready, and have a lovely feast there. Likewise, loving just using edible plants as ground cover where I might otherwise have a weed problem, and one of the best for that I found is this sweet potato. It does a lovely, lovely carpet of colour. I've got the bright green. I've recently put in the purple leaf, and I literally started my whole patch, and I've got several metres square of sweet potato now, just from a cutting that was given to me. So anyone who wants to have a go, come and help yourself to a cutting today, and you'll have a patch in no time. So the leaves you can eat, lightly steamed or blanched. The fruit, the tuber, you can eat as well. It's a white with a slightly sort of pinky purple fleck through it, and I tend not to, I'm actually not harvesting mine at the moment, but if times were tough and I needed to go and harvest a feed from the garden, I would have an abundance of potatoes to draw upon there. So lush, gorgeous leaves. The weeds don't stand a chance. When you've got sweet potato growing, they work really, really well. They stay nice and low and spreading across the ground. So lovely, lush leaves there. So I've got plenty to share today, so do come and have some of those. So sweet potato, and I've just started the purple, and I think that's going to look really, really good against my light green and the lime coloured sweet potato as well. So under trees and filling in gaps as well. We love having chilies at home. I cook, my husband and I both cook with a lot of chili, so we love to go out and just harvest chilies from our garden. We even have some big ones too. So I thought they'd be good to show you today, the bigger growing ones. But we have a whole assortment, and you know, they're very ornamental as well. There's, you know, pops of red and purple and green through the garden, just gorgeous. And likewise, cherry tomatoes are also very ornamental. They're little clusters of fruit, little bunches of fruit looking really stunning on the plant. And the cherry tomatoes, I find, you know, the foliage seems to last a little bit longer, for me anyway, than the taller, bigger tomato plants. And the flavour is fantastic. Other things to include in your garden, Cape gooseberries. Who grows Cape gooseberries here? Aren't they lovely with their sort of lanterns over the little fruits? And very, very tasty and good for the little ones to forage and find as well. Blueberries, so where you might otherwise consider perhaps growing, you know, in a shady southern aspect, growing gardenia or azalea, perhaps you might consider a blueberry. We have a hedge of these that gets a little bit of tree shade, and it gets lots of morning sun though. And they're growing very, very well. I love the foliage, which changes colour subtly with the seasons. The flowers are really pretty, and of course the berries as well. And with a family, you definitely again need more than one plant. We have 3 in a row, and I think we probably need some more, because once you want to have a nice decent blueberry feast, you need a big bowl full of those. So they will grow in similar situations. They like a slightly acidic soil, which your gardenia azalea family like as well. So nice spot to pop in some blueberries. Ground covers such as, I mentioned the thyme, but also the oregano is a lovely one with the grey leaf, or the golden oregano with the gold colour coming through. There is so many thymes on the market as well. One of my favourites is called pizza thyme, which is actually a cross between thyme and oregano, and it smells just like pizza topping herbs. It is gorgeous. Very ornamental too. There's some gold thyme, variegated thyme, woolly thyme. We all need more thyme, I think. And today I was just chatting to a lady about planting different kinds of mint. So a small leafed mint in between pavers will also help deter ants. Ants don't like mint. So pennyroyal is a nice one that doesn't invade garden beds, and it's just so pretty to walk on. I love this one underneath. When I'm doing plans for clients, I'll put it underneath stepping stones near a clothesline, and just touching the leaf, you get this lovely aroma of mint coming up. So that's a really, really nice one too. And then it's serving that kind of, you know, solving a problem that some people have with ants in the garden as well. Loving all the colour there too. And there's the oregano, contrasted with some salvia. So your salvia being your sage family, the purple and the gold looking just stunning together. So you get to be an artist when you're planting out your garden as well. You're considering form and colour and shape and texture, and you're combining all these things together. So it's a very rewarding thing, and then you get to eat it as well, which is even better. So why would we be looking to grow edibles? Well, I don't think we can dispute the fact that homegrown produce has so much more flavour than, you know, some of the supermarket produce. I'm thinking tomato is the key one. You know, the beautiful shiny big tomato on the supermarket shelf, and you bite into it and it's bland and it's boring. Whereas those lovely little sweet cherry tomatoes that you grow at home, full of flavour in each mouthful. So there's certainly a big plus with flavour. Also nutrient, you know, with picking and transport for supermarket produce, you know, the flavour and nutrient levels declines, and often the things on the supermarket shelf have been picked, you know, at least a week ago, maybe more. Whereas in your home garden, you can go out and pick it right then and there, eat it that minute, or have it that night for dinner. So you're getting a lot more nutrient value in your fruit and vegetables as well. Particularly if you look to growing organically, and I would suggest if you're going to grow your own, you may as well do it organically with organic fertiliser, organic plant material even, and if you're growing in a contained unit, use some organic potting mix. Which is what I've got in my veggie pot, so we know that it's full nutrient all the way through. And then we just fertilise with something nice and safe. You know, blood and bone is fine, fish emulsion, and your seaweed type products. So we have that control when we're growing our own about, you know, how safe is this food. If we can choose not to use pesticides, herbicides, chemicals. We can choose not to do those and have full benefit from that, because a lot of those chemicals do stay within the system. And I want you all to be very, very healthy and garden for a long time. So I would encourage you to look for more natural solutions and definitely grow organically. And when we're growing our own food, you know, if we've had a tough week and, you know, the bank account's dwindling, you know, you've got food in the garden to draw on. If times are tough, you can feed yourself, and that's very reassuring to know that you don't have to go hungry. In fact, I would love to see more public spaces have food crops growing, and I'm hearing of some new estates developing now where they're including fruit trees in the parkland areas, which is just wonderful. City Farm and there's a fantastic urban orchard. Have you come across the urban orchard, which has been around for a few years? That concept where there is food available for everyone and no one needs ever go hungry is a really, really good thing. So we can all do our bits, planting at our verges even with edible plants and sharing produce amongst friends and family and passers-by, and get everyone growing and enjoying good quality, health-filled food. By growing our own as well, you know, it is said that home gardeners will use half the amount of water that large-scale production gardens, you know, for example, growing a lettuce, will use half the amount of water than a production system would use to make that same lettuce. Plus, you know, we're doing it organically and having fun at the same time. And if you do grow your own edible plants, you will notice, and it depends how far you go with this, but you will notice a decrease in the weekly grocery budget. You can save hundreds of dollars over a year, hundreds and hundreds over a year, with growing some of your own staple things. So I'd start first of all with what you love to eat and what you eat, what you consume the most. And for us, we use a lot of lettuce and a lot of silver beet, and we love rocket and obviously our chilies and things. So we've started with those, and it does snowball. And so I encourage you all to get out there and have fun growing your own produce. Have a go. There's a summary of the notes from today in your booklet that you received when you came in through the door, the Show Garden booklet. And if you've got any other queries, please get in contact with me. Any questions? Any questions? Yes?
You talked about replenishing the soil
in pots. Yeah.
Pots.
Yeah.
Quite heavy. How do you do it?
Yes, it is tricky. So the trick first of all is to look for pots that don't taper in. You want pots that are tapering out or straight-sided. Like a big pot like that, you'd probably need a hand to tip it onto its side carefully, maybe cushioning where it's lying, and to gently pull the plant out. You might even need to use a little bit of water. A hose actually helps loosen things a little bit too. To sort of wiggle it out, and then you would hose off the soil and replenish that. So it is a big job with a big plant, much easier with little ones.
So
and
would you completely wash the soil away?
You would, yeah, fresh potting mix, because that plant has no access to the soil to get any kind of nutrient or access there. So it's all about what's going on at the top. And you know, you'd only do that when you see that it's looking like it's needing something and it's been in there for a while. For a really big pot, you might get 5 to 10 years. Smaller pots might deplete quicker, but it is important to replenish that. Okay, how are we going? Any other questions? Yes?
I have a problem with mould crickets eating my seeds and seedlings.
Oh, goodness me. Okay, now I am a big fan of safe remedies, so you could perhaps try some diatomaceous earth sprinkled around your seedlings. That's a natural, it's from the marine diatoms, and it's their exoskeleton, very fine powdery type thing, but it's very sharp for small insects. So that would be a barrier sprinkle around your plants. You do need to reapply it after rain, but that's worth trying. Garlic and chilli spray is also very effective as a sort of repellent deterrent type scenario.
But they're in the ground.
Yes, but are they coming up, just eating the roots of the plants? Okay.
Well, and seeds, eat the seeds.
And eating seeds as well. Okay. Well, I would try the veggie pod. I would, because that's up above the ground, self-contained, and just you won't look back. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Thank you for that. Any other questions? No? Time to go. Thank you.